Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beastly Talks. I'm your host, Stian Helling, and today I have with me a very special guest. It's someone I've known for a pretty long time, who I was kind of part of starting their career, which is very exciting to have this conversation with my very good friend, Paula from Crazy Mutz. How are you, Miss Paula?
I am doing very well, Master Stian. How are you doing?
Mustard. I am good.
Always Master Stian.
We are. I'm essentially sitting in a sauna. Like, I feel like every single podcast that I've recorded, or the last 5 podcasts pretty much, have been, I am so fucking hot and I'm so fucking tired. That's pretty much how every podcast starts. But, here we are. We're just sweltering through the heat. How hot is it down your way?
Oh, it is ridiculous right now. It's I think it just hit 43 degrees. Nasty.
Yeah,
What are you there?
We're on 40 here, so we're usually a little bit lower than you guys. But yeah, it's still sauna temperatures.
Yeah, it's awful.
Good times. All right, so now I want to just quickly touch on how we actually met because, dropped my pen. Because that is a bit of a funny conversation and it was quite random. And I think it's a story worth telling. So I had Agner at the time. From memory, he was around 4 or 5 months at the time. He was still quite young. And I had one issue with him at the time. And that was he had separation anxiety, but just from me. So if my missus took him for a walk, he'd be screaming the whole walk because I wasn't there, right? And and we were kind of like, all right, we need to deal with this. We need to deal with this because it can't just be you and him all the time. And so I remember we walked out the door. Mrs. Alice has the leash. She walks him. He's like straining to try to get to me. He's screaming. He's crying. We walk across the road and we start doing just walking away exercises. Like I'd be walking away, he'd be sitting still next to her, he'd get some treats, blah, blah, blah. And he would be whining and crying and screaming. And I was kind of annoyed because I'm like, this is not the issue that I wanted to deal with right now. And suddenly from the other side of the road, I hear, "Are you the dog trainer?" And I am just not focused at all. I'm just in the middle of dealing with this shitty little Malinois that can't be away from me. And then I hear this from across the road, and I kind of just started laughing because the whole situation was so bizarre. And that's how we met.
That's how we met. So from my perspective, that story is perhaps a little bit different because I had a relatively new dog too, little Rusty. Jack Russell Cross was, I don't know, probably 6, 8 months old at the time. A prolific leash puller. My thumb used to be purple in a thumb lock. It was ridiculous. But I had watched a woman going to the Delta Road kindergarten and her dog Marmalade was just so attentive to her. Sat, looked up at her. It was just the most well-behaved dog. And I bailed her up and said, "What have you done with this dog? Because whatever you have done, the results are astounding." And she said, "Oh, we saw a trainer. He lives just up around the road there." So I stalked you just a little bit on social media, which I remember telling you in your driveway. And then I realized you weren't Australian and I had to backtrack and go, wait. Not real stalking. Stalking to an Aussie just means I've checked out your work on social media. Not that I'm going to, boy your pet bunny or anything terrible like that. And
Yep.
and I knew that you were running behind in your admin work. So I went, "Can I do your admin work if you let me come out with you and show me how you train dogs?" So that was my perspective on that meeting. And you kindly did. And your generosity, I will always be grateful for. And you've taught me an incredible amount. So thank you, Steve.
Well, No, my absolute pleasure. No, that's very good to hear, and it's just funny because it was such an out of the blue interaction, and it just ended up now having been a 5 year long friendship. Is it five,
Yeah.
6 years we've known each other roughly, and we speak quite often, and we meet up whenever I'm in the city, and we always have a good time. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I'm very
lovely.
excited about
It's
getting
lovely.
stuck into this little conversation here. But as with everything, every new person on the show, tell us your origin story. What did you do before dogs? How did you get into dogs? Did you have dogs as a kid? Like, just how did you end up here, essentially?
Well, I grew up on a sheep farm, so we always had working dogs, multiple working dogs often, primarily border collies and kelpies. I think there was a couple of red heelers and a couple of blue heelers in there. I remember one we actually inherited with the house. It was a border collie that was mental. His name was Spike. Um, so always
Are
been
you
around
saying
dogs.
that there are you actually saying that there are normal border collies out there? Because I haven't met one yet.
I love me a border collie, but I'm fond of fuckery. I like that. So, that perhaps that's a me thing. Always loved the dogs, did a little bit of training with the dogs on the farm, got some good results primarily using positive reinforcement. I think in a farm setting, dogs are often barked orders at and growled at if they do the wrong thing without the opposite side of the coin and praised when they are doing the right thing. So I did a little bit of work with that as a kid, but then I grew up and I got married and I had 3 daughters, and then I had another 2 daughters a bit later on with well, 3 biological, 2 inherited. Was very busy raising the kids, did jobs that were around the hours of being available to our beautiful girls. And then when COVID hit, was a, not engineer, I suppose I was a technician with Pitney Bowes. I installed franking machines. And of course, all the offices shut down and I was out of a job. And my husband said to me, "What have you always wanted to do? You're 49 years old, you've got some time off of work. It's a great time to study. What have you always wanted to do? The world's your oyster." And I said, "I want to know the mechanics of training dogs." So I did dog psychology and training with my learning on my online, which sort of gave me I suppose, a good basis, perhaps not as good as um, the National Dog Trainers Federation course, which I think I should probably go back and do at some stage or another, just because of the legalities of it. Um, but it sort of really piqued my interest in it. And then I did another course with them, which was on dog care. So it was like a prelim to veterinary nursing, but specifically around dogs. Um, and then I bailed you up in the driveway. I always wanted to go the training route, but then I bailed you up in the driveway, and the rest is history.
Yeah,
Taught Rusty
interesting.
how to loose leash walk.
Yeah, well, we did a little bit of work with Rusty on a few different things. He's now. I think it's probably worth mentioning at this point that you did a DNA test for your little Jack Russell, and he came back as Jack Russell cross Bull Arab, and none of us can work out how that actually happened.
No, close. It wasn't Bull Arab, it was Can fucking Corso. I don't even know. And
Concorso,
like,
that's right.
what does the mating of a Can Corso and a Jack Russell look like? I loved doing a DNA test on him because it also came back about 5% Hamilton Stover and 5% Trained Coonhound, um, which both scent hounds. And Rusty was always that little Jack Russell. If he was on a scent during a walk, you were never getting him off, and completely changed the way I trained him. There was lots of scent detection games involved, and getting him to use his nose was a really good thing to do. Great value for $105.
Yep, fair enough. And look, at
Yeah,
the end of the day, from what I've heard, those DNA tests are a little bit sketchy at times. So we might not know exactly what's
yeah.
going on with Rusty, but he does have a very unusual face for a Jack Russell, which is why you wanted to do the test to begin with. And him being
Big
a bull
old
breed in
bullfed.
there, that actually kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right.
Although he did have his 5th birthday yesterday, our little man, I can't believe he's 5 years old, and he has
Wow.
settled into a really beautiful, gentlemanly, middle-aged man.
And I guess another thing as well, you currently have two young female Jack Russells as
Yep,
well.
2 little
So
baby
how are
sisters.
they? How are they going?
Well, they're just gorgeous. They're gorgeous, and it's been lovely to watch Rusty with them because a little bit like Ollie, watching Ollie condition puppies was always quite a lovely thing in that he would correct them, but he'd never be too harsh. And Rusty's exactly the same. He's a very good puppy teacher of manners. So, yeah, and he loves his sisters and they love him. So it's kind of a nice thing.
Now, I know this is a little bit off topic about what we're going to talk about, but yes, you do have two sisters. So I remember
I
you
do.
messaging me and you said at some point, "Hey, have you heard of this thing called littermate syndrome?" And we had a little bit of a chat about that. And, what have you been doing to try and combat littermate syndrome? And for anyone who might not know what that is, it's two siblings. They get brought up together, and they kind of end up in this, often in this weird love hate relationship where they can't be away from
Yeah.
each other, but they also can't be near each other. So, what have you kind of implemented to try and combat that in your two girls?
Look, when they were puppies, I was always very cautious to give them a lot of separated time. So when I went off to work, I got a little backpack and I put a puppy in the backpack with me and a water bowl in the side of my pocket of my cargo pants. And they spent the whole day separated. I'd turn them about. So I'd take Penny one day and Lulu the other day, and they became a-okay with not being in each other's company, which stops that codependent side of it. We're also a household that is very consequence-based learning with our dogs. So we're big into yes and rewards when they do the right thing. We're big into and when they needed a water spray bottle to the face or a stomp of the foot, some sort of disruptor so that they know they've definitely done the wrong thing. So clear boundaries in our household with the dogs, and they all grow together really nicely. We really haven't had any issues with littermate syndrome, but I think it's because early on we did give them that independence and separation from each other, as well as, very firm boundaries with behavior.
Yeah, and a common theme when I'm talking about dog training is always structure and clear boundaries and consequences for behavior, because that is where most people's training fall apart. They let dogs run free in the house. They never say no to the dog, even when they're shredding shoes or biting the kids, and everything
Yeah.
just becomes chaos. And then they call us at 9 months old, like when the puppy is 9 months old, and now we're essentially walking into a nuclear bomb site.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm not one of those. It's a little bit like parenting trends. I'm not one of those gentle parents. Um, if something's gone wrong, you will be corrected. You will be corrected with love. I'm not going to beat you up or anything horrific like that, but you will be told in no uncertain terms that this is a boundary that doesn't get crossed.
Yeah, we're done with the drawing and quartering, but you still have to be told that fuck that off.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And I
All
think
right.
dogs are
So,
happier for that.
oh, 100%. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
they're less stressed because they know exactly what's expected of them. They know exactly what the consequences are, and they know exactly how
yeah.
to avoid those consequences.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think when it's taught with fairness, that's kind of the secret of it. You taught me that very well.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad I taught you that because that is a very important point. Now, why dog training? And like, did you know what you wanted to do in dog training? Like, was there a plan, or was it literally just I love dogs, I want to know more about dogs?
I love dogs. I want to know everything about dogs, not more about dogs, everything. I'm a little OCD. Um, so yeah, and I still want to know everything about dogs. So um, I would like to try my hand at every aspect of training. At the moment, I love where I am, which is training pet dogs, and I know that's a bit of an axe to grind with a lot of trainers. But I've found for me, watching that relationship where the dog and the human just don't understand each other at all, going to a symbiotic relationship where they do understand each other and they can predict the outcomes of behaviours through both species and know what to do about it. I find that quite magical. So I've always been obsessed with dogs. I did think I would go down the scent detection route more, and I've ended up in pet training, and I've ended up doing a lot of work in counter conditioning to mobility devices. After my husband and I looked after grandma, my husband's beautiful mother, she developed Alzheimer's, and in the thick of her Alzheimer's, they forget how to walk, they forget how to toilet themselves. You need a lot of extra hands on deck. So we had hoists, we had wheelchairs, we had different palliative care workers coming in and out of our home, and Rusty just lost his shit at everything that was new in the environment and the movement. You know, being a hunting breed, the movement of a hoist or a wheelchair, he would just lose his shit, lose his mind. Um, so I had to become an expert really quickly in counter conditioning and getting him comfortable with all sorts of new things coming into our property and into our home. And that's what I've ended up doing the bulk of my work with. So I do a lot of work within the NDIS system for people who have specific behavioural issues relating to their mobility devices with their dogs.
Okay. And we'll get a little bit more into what that actually means in a little bit. But I just want to go back to something you said before. So you
Sure.
seem to think that people, like, there are a lot of trainers that have an axe to grind with pet dogs. And do you actually find that? Because I find the majority of people do work with pet dogs.
Yeah, I suppose I hear a lot of trainers, not a lot of trainers. I've heard some trainers whinging about it. Whinging about, and I get what they whinge about, you know, that you kind of go through some strategies with a pet dog owner and they are very much about the, oh no, 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 this is my fur baby and I only want to love him. I don't want to tell him off when he does something wrong. Whereas, you know, I go through and show them how to tell them off when they do something wrong and then mark and reward them when they make a different choice. So I suppose it's that whole balance scenario. But I do hear a lot of trainers doing the, oh, pet dogs, they're the worst. Even on some of our favorite podcasts, they're like, dog sport people, awesome. Pet dog people, ugh. So yeah, it's a bit of a narrative.
It's actually an interesting one because I find, for someone who I work with a lot of working dogs, but in a pet dog setting. Like I don't
Yeah.
train police dogs, military dogs, that kind of stuff, which or sport dogs for that matter. But it's funny how, like, proper working dogs are so fucking easy because they just want to do stuff all the time. They're so easy to work with compared to pet dogs who don't want to do jack shit except kill the neighbor dog. And finding the balance there is actually, in my opinion, a lot more complicated than getting a Malinois to bite someone in a suit, if you know what I mean.
Okay, that's I don't know, I find that kind of interesting. Yeah. I suppose I don't tend to hang out with many people who have Malinois that wanna bite a suit, but I do hang out with a lot of pet dog owners. I suppose what I find, I hang out with a lot of pet dog owners that don't quite understand how their dog's brains work, because they do work quite differently than a human brain, right? So, yeah, I don't know, that's an
And I
interesting one.
mean,
I never
yeah, and I mean,
sorry, go
in the pet dog space, probably 99% of people don't actually understand how their dogs work until they have a problem dog and they get a trainer in and they get taught, oh, actually, this is how your dog operates. Whereas in
Yeah.
the working dog space, 99% of people do understand how dogs work. And
Okay. Yep.
but yeah, again, like it's with Agnar and with Gunnar at the moment, my new little Kelpie puppy, they are just on all the time. Like teaching them to do stuff is so fucking easy. Whereas when I walk into someone who's got like a Shiba Inu that has bitten three people and the dog doesn't even go outside for toilet because it's too fucking lazy, you're like, how do I
Oh,
motivate
wow.
this dog to actually do anything? You know what I mean? So to
Okay.
me,
I've got to
that's actually
admit,
more
yeah.
complicated.
That
Yeah.
is complicated. I haven't come across that yet. I've come across dogs that are frustrated because, there's very little biological fulfillment and there's very little play. I suppose these days I've been doing a lot of study and become quite a big advocate of players' reward as an alternative to food as a reward and getting rid of that, not getting rid of that drive in your dog, fulfilling that drive in your dog, particularly if it's, something like a working breed of anything, be it a herding breed or if, like me, you've got Jack Russells, a hunting breed. They're still the same. They're littler. You can pick them up easier. but,
Yeah,
but they're
exactly.
still going to tear your couch apart unless you give them a great fun game that gets that energy out.
Yeah, and I think that's what you meant was not get rid of the drive, but get the drive out of the dog in a productive
Yeah.
manner.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
uh,
In a safe and productive manner. Yeah.
yeah, 100%. It's so important, and it's one of probably I would say at this point one of the big lost arts in dog training in this day and age because everyone just tries to suppress drive, and whether that is with the use of aversives to like hey never do anything or whether it's using food to like hey I never want you to get excited about anything, there is a really bad point in my opinion in dog training in this time because everyone's just trying to kill drive one way or another and no one's actually going like hey dude let's fucking have a good time together and let's learn how to work together in a full state drive in a full state of drive and arousal, which is the fun
Yeah.
bit. Like that's why we have working dogs, right? Because they are fucking mental and we have a lot of fun with them because they are mental.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. I think some people just kind of really would prefer a dog toy rather than a real dog. Like just be dog shaped and fluffy and sit on my couch. I like a dog that's got a bit of fuckery to it. I like a bit of drive. I like a bit of play. I admire all those traits in working dogs.
Yeah, no, I agree. I 100% agree. Dogs should be dogs. I mean, if you want a furry pet rock, by all means, go and get one,
Pet
or
rock.
get a cat. Like they'll look after themselves,
Yeah,
But like,
yeah, yeah.
if you get a working line German Shepherd, chances of that just automatically becoming a couch potato are slim to none. Let's just put it that way.
Very slim to none.
All right, so I want to talk about one other thing, which I found really interesting about you and your growing up on a farm. So when I met you, you were very much on the force-free side of dog training, and I guess at this point I would call you a crossover force-free trainer more than anything. And I remember one
Ooh.
thing that you said. I remember one thing that you said to me that has stuck with me. And you said, we always looked at, or we always knew how people treated their working dogs on the farm by how many fingers they were missing.
Yep,
So, do you want to
absolutely.
elaborate a little bit on that for us?
Look, it's a thing with farmers. There are two stereotypes about farmers. You can tell if they're an arsehole to their dog because dogs only cop a certain amount of arseholishness before they fight back. Anything. You can only feed it humble pie so much until it throws it up. Um, and you could always tell the old farmers that were arseholes to their dogs because they were always missing an index or a FU finger. occasionally a thumb. And you could always tell the farmers who were drunkards because they always had a limp because they rolled their tractor when they were pissed. So, yeah, it's a couple of stereotypes, but they ring true.
Yep. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, would you call yourself a force free crossover trainer yourself? Because
I
you
don't
had a
know.
lot of
Yeah,
issues with when I was talking about pressure and the use of punishment in the early
yeah,
stages. You seemed quite freaked out
yeah.
by that, and but you stuck with it. You didn't just bail out, which is what so many people do. And how has that changed your outlook on training and your actual training?
So I suppose growing up on a farm, you did see dogs being treated quite roughly. And I think that I thought it was just very unbalanced, that the dogs were never praised for doing things awesome. Like you'd see a dog round up a whole heap of sheep up into the top paddock, and it never got a great big scruff around the neck and good job, and it kind of never got that afterwards. It only ever seemed to get orders and told off when it did the wrong thing. Um, so I suppose I felt it was unbalanced and that there needed to be more positivity into it. I think there is also that little bit of you know, perhaps a trauma response because growing up on the land is not an easy thing. There is a level of roughness to it and you see life and death at a very young age. So there is a little bit of that, I don't know, I don't even know how to describe it, but I was leaning towards force free definitely because if the theory is that you can just love your dog and only give it praise and get it to do all those things, then why wouldn't you? Like, why wouldn't you? That sounds like a great avenue. But then you start working a couple of dogs and you're like, okay, so they're a lot like toddlers. You can't just go, I love you. Don't run across the road. I love you. I love you. You're going to end up with a dead kid. Occasionally, you've got to grab its hand and give its shoulder a yank if it puts itself in a dangerous situation. So, yes, I suppose that I was in a mental state of looking at being force free, but I didn't have enough evidence to know if that could work. So I was open to both. I think what I grew up with was more negative reinforcement and punishment of dogs, very much outweighed by any sort of positive reinforcement. So I felt that piece of the puzzle was missing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and look, it's an interesting one, especially when we're talking about herding dogs, because I think herding dog training is probably the perfect example of Nipo Po. Now, for those people who may not know what Nipo Po is, it essentially stands for negative, positive, positive, which is a training system created by Bart Bellin and Michael Bellin. But the idea is that you apply negative reinforcement, some form of pressure to activate a dog into behavior first, and then you release that pressure when the dog activates into the behavior, and then they're allowed their positive reinforcement afterwards. And especially in the herding space, all you do is use negative reinforcement to try and teach the dog what to do. You use the rake, you hold the rake out to keep them at a distance away from the sheep so they don't come in and they bite the sheep, they ruin the fur, they injure the sheep.
Yeah.
And all that is pressure-based training. So you're pushing the dog back with the rake, you get them to circle, you teach them the words as they're conducting the behavior under a certain level of negative reinforcement and pressure at that point. But the positive reinforcement is always there because the positive reinforcement is the sheep,
Yeah.
right? So the actual positive reinforcement that the dog is looking for is the hunt of the sheep. It's not even the biting and the killing of the sheep. It's the hunt of them. It's the driving them. It's the pushing them. Is to utilize their body and their power and their strength to go like, hey, I can move 50 sheep with my little 22-kilo kelpie body, right? And that makes them feel strong and powerful, but it also fulfills that innate biological drive that they have to herd the dogs. So it is interesting because, yeah, like from everything that I've seen, and we take Gunnar to herding at the moment just to teach him some basics, not because he's going to be a herding dog, but just to give him an outlet because he's going to have a stressful job being a trigger dog and all that. Um, I don't think I've ever seen punishment used myself in herding training because it is just pressure, pressure, keep at a distance, do the thing, circle this way, circle that way. Um, Look, I have seen kelpies that have gotten whacked on the head with the rake, the plastic rake, when they've gotten too close, which would be positive punishment. But at the end of the day, it's pretty much negative reinforcement based training with the driver of positive reinforcement at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, Look, I've known some pretty rough farmers. I've seen some dogs kicked all the way down driveways when they put sheep into the wrong paddock or something else. So to me, it always seemed just a little bit unbalanced in some farmers' interactions with their working dogs. Not necessarily when the dogs were working, um, but in their interactions with the working dogs.
Yeah, and again, like we keep coming back to this. Like the crime has to fit the punishment has to fit the crime,
Has to fit the
right?
crime. Yeah, it's got to be
If you
fair.
make a Yeah, if you if you put the fork in the wrong fucking drawer, you don't get hanged outside the house. Like that seems a bit excessive. Know what I mean? So no, no, I totally get that. But again, it's interesting because I know from a lot of the hunting breeds, so like the retriever breeds and gun dogs and that kind of stuff. The early training of them was extremely forceful. And a lot of that was actually trying to make up for a lack of genetic capability. So they
Oh,
had the dog that
interesting.
they had, but the dog didn't have quite enough, maybe, of the innate drive to retrieve, to point to whatever it was. And so that's where the teaching of skills like the forced fetch came from originally, right? And for the people who don't know what a forced fetch is, it's essentially you would apply some form of high level of pain to a dog. The dog would then squeal. You would then put something in their mouth and take the pain away. And the idea was to force them to hold something whether they wanted to or not. Now, the modern version of a forced fetch is much gentler. It still utilizes a little bit of negative reinforcement and pressure, but it doesn't utilize pain in the way that it did back then. But yeah, a lot of the kind of heavy training methods from, anywhere from 20 to 50 years ago were actually there to make up for a lack of innate drive in the dog. So, like, hey, you need to do this whether you want to or not. And I am going to force you with such heavy compulsion that you'll never question it, essentially.
Well, let's be honest, that's what dog training was. When you look at some of those dog trials from the 70s with German Shepherds, you sort of go, holy shit. That's just, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so compulsion driven.
Yeah, the guy, I remember there was a video that came out not too long ago. And again, I know we're completely off topic here, but this is interesting. But there was a
That's
video
all good.
that I saw from like the mid 70s, I think. The guy who won the healing competition somewhere in America, like this massive, like countrywide healing competition. And he's just walking normally. And this shepherd is like head down, tail down, just like kind of like hunching, like hovering next to this guy. And he was the one who
Oh,
won because the dog did the best healing. And you're like, holy shit, we've come a long way from what they do in IGP now and those kind of things.
poor dog's friggin' terrified.
Yeah. Well, all he's doing at that point is avoiding pressure, right? But again, that's what we knew back then. Well, I wasn't a trainer back then, not even close, but that's all they knew back then. And that's what they worked with. And we've come a long way since then. But we've also gone a little bit too far in the never say no to your dog direction. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at here.
I agree. I agree.
All right. So NDIS, you mentioned NDIS before, and I know this is a topic that you like. Is if there's something you
It's
can't talk about, you
complex.
just
Oh, no, 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 it's
yeah.
fine.
And
It's just
but
complex. The system is
if there's something
incredibly
you can't,
complex.
yeah, sure. But if there is something you can't talk about, just skip on, and we'll go from there. But first of all, what is NDIS? And I guess how does it work in relation to dogs and what you do?
Yep. So the NDIS is the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And you can be on the NDIS for many reasons. My clients, I have one with multiple sclerosis who is immobile, and I have another one who is a paraplegic. Um, but you can be on the NDIS for all sorts of reasons. For example, we have the world's most beautiful little 3-year-old granddaughter, and she is level 3 autistic. So she's on the NDIS, and it's designed to help people with some sort of, I always hate using the word disability because some of my NDIS clients are the most capable people that I've ever met. So I feel a little bit funny using the word like somehow they're less than. But the whole purpose of it is to help pay for services and therapies that bring their lives up to the same sort of level as an able bodied person, giving them the same freedom of community as an able bodied person is probably a better way to put it. So that's what the NDIS is. My
Yeah,
work,
because and just to
sorry,
touch
go on.
on one thing there, real quick, I do know exactly like what you said there. There's an interesting phrasing, but I know community access is a big thing in NDIS, and actually allowing people with some form of physical disability to help them get out into the community and have, for lack of a better word, as normal of a life as possible.
Yeah, yeah. I think they should have the exact same full participation in the things that an able bodied person is able to participate in. Um, Dog training within the NDIS space is incredibly complex. You can't just be on the NDIS and say, I want my dog to learn how to sit. I'm going to call in a dog trainer and the NDIS pay for it. System doesn't work like that. The only way it gets approved is if the specific behavioral issue with the dog is linked to the person's disability. So, for example, my guy in the wheelchair, his dog was unruly. he, he's a Kelpie Whippet cross, so and a puppy. So pulling back that drive, working out ways that my client can attach a leash to his wheelchair without it getting caught underneath the axle. So coming up with things that are a little bit different, and work to what the owner is capable of. And he was also a little bit on the reactive side around his chair. He has the most amazing spatial pressure. It was my first time working with somebody in a chair, and his dog's awareness of his dad's positioning is just off the charts. I'm sure he got a paw run over accidentally a time or two, and that's why his spatial awareness is better than any other dog that I've ever worked with. Um, but yeah, in specific instances, particularly counter conditioning to reactivity around devices. My MS client, every time support workers come in to move her on a hoist, she's got a Rottweiler and a toy poodle. Not the sort of brother and sister team you usually see,
Wow,
but
no,
yeah,
not at
the
all.
dogs would lose their mind and start trying to charge the door, which is dangerous for the support workers, dangerous for her, dangerous to the hoist. So under those circumstances, it's allowed.
Yeah, okay. Yep, fair enough. Because obviously, dogs must have an immense effect on people who maybe have some limitations in order to where they can move, where they can go, how they can socialize, and so forth. Like dogs must have an immensely good effect on these people.
Oh, I I I think for a lot of people, it's an interesting thing because within the people, you see a lot of frustration that their lives have become smaller, but you also see that frustration in the dog as well. So it's my job to try and make both of their lives bigger and have them both having access to more things. And it's really rewarding work, and I absolutely love it.
Mm. And I mean biological fulfillment, which is something we talk a lot about in terms of prey drive and getting high drive dogs to kind of get some of that crap out of their system and actually learn how to control it. But that very much would apply to humans as well.
Oh, it's very applicable in both species, absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, cool. Like it's so interesting that you like. How did you find your way into this? Because I know, obviously, one of my very good friends is an assistance dog trainer, which is kind of the only recognized, uh, what Americans would call a service dog in this space. But that's the only really recognized qualification for a dog where they can go on planes, they can travel on public transport, etc., etc. And so I very much see the need for that, but how did you find your way into this space? Was it just by accident? Was it someone you knew? Was it something you actively went for?
I accidentally fell into this space. It's only been in the last couple of years that they've tightened up the rules with the NDIS and training. Before that, it was a little bit looser, and I had trained a little Jack Russell, and the mother's sister in law was on the NDIS and had a lovely little fox terrier, um, but was a nut job because, he was cooped up inside the whole time.
And
So
it's a
I
fox
came in,
terrier.
yeah, so I came in with a flirt pole, and George and I became very, very, very fast friends. And just, I suppose, that thing that, he settled down within the house, and we did a lot of, you know, biological fulfillment with his feeding, scattering it on the grass outside rather than him sitting on the couch 24/7. So yeah, it's an interesting field. I fell into it via George at first, and then I suppose word spread a little bit throughout the community. But now that they've tightened up the laws, there's not the same. It's not the same sort of training because it is quite specific around reactivity to devices, or helping them figure out how to walk their dog on their wheelchair and that sort of thing. It's a little bit different than when I first started, but yeah, basically I accidentally fell into it. Georgie was the
Enough.
impetus.
Yeah, fair enough. And Georgie is the little foxy, I presume.
Yeah, beautiful boy.
I've met George, haven't I?
I
I think
think
I
you
have.
have met young
Was,
Georgie.
was, was he the one who bit Agner in the face and Agner just kind of looked at him offended?
No, that was Blue. That was Blue,
Oh,
the little Jack Russell. Yeah, that's a ballsy little Jack Russell, right? Looks up at a
or
huge
is it a
melon going,
or is it a
terrier
terrified
thing?
one who's just
Oh,
overreacting?
yeah,
Uh,
yes.
you know, who knows?
Good point. Good point.
So so yeah, look, we've been talking for 45 minutes and we haven't actually gotten to the point that we were meant to talk
Oh,
about today,
oops.
which was um, mentorship. And so I know, obviously, you followed me on jobs for about 12, 18 months, I think. That kind
Yeah,
of on and off a little bit. And then you went off and started doing your own thing. And what, I guess, because one thing I do get a lot of students, like dog training students, contact me and they go like, hey, do you offer mentorship? Do you know anyone who does? And it is actually surprisingly hard to find someone to help you out. And I wish I could help more people, but now that I live in the middle of butt fuck nowhere, I am a bit limited in terms of how much I can help people and that kind of stuff. But I guess what what cha- like how did it affect you as a trainer having a mentor? And what would
Oh,
you say for anyone looking for a mentor? What should they be looking for? And yeah, look, I train the way that I do, I mentor the way that I do. We don't need to talk about that specifically, but are there any particular things you think people should be looking for? Any pitfalls? I don't know. What are your thoughts on mentorship in dog training?
well, I think having a mentor is life-changing, particularly a good one, and, not to blow too much smoke up your ass, Stian, but
Don't.
I think a brilliant mentor changes everything. When I did my course, it was all theory, and then you took me out and you showed me the practicalities. So seeing what it looks like we know the theory of loose leash walking, but actually seeing what it looks like. We know the theory of correcting, but seeing what it looks like. Perhaps for me, because I'm a visual learner, that's really important. Um, but having a mentor, it's an incredible, valuable commodity, not just from the point of view that you've got somebody to support you and teach you, but, you have other students which you've introduced me to, and I've had 2 occasions where I was, training a dog with a specific issue. I remember one was an incredibly anxious Great Dane, and I sought Alice's advice, another one of your students. And I was working with another dog that we had 90% of its loose leash walking perfectly, but this was a herding breed, and another one of your students, Carolina, like she's an amazing trainer on herding breeds. So I asked her to come in and I got to watch the sessions. So you get to learn from people who don't do things that are necessarily in your wheelhouse. So I think that commodity, as well as a teaching commodity, is remarkable. How to find a great mentor? Well, I just bailed him up in his driveway. It wasn't that hard, but but I think there are a lot of things to look out for in a really good mentor. One thing that I always really admired about you is you could tell by the look on my face when I was a little bit lost. And you'd always take me back to where I understood. If we were going through a concept and I was looking a bit lost, you'd go, okay, where did you understand to? And you'd take me back to there and explain it step by step until I got it. So I think patience is vital in a mentor. And I'm sure it's not a lot of fun teaching sometimes. Um, but yeah, I think
Well,
those are,
I can't speak for anyone else, but I actually love teaching people. So I'm happy to explain the same concept fucking 10 times in a row if that's what it takes for people to get it. But that's me, I guess.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. And you're very good at it. You do such good analogies. I remember you teaching us about the e-collars and particularly on lower levels and you saying, when you get in your car and you don't do your seatbelt up quick enough and it goes bing, 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 and just annoys the shit out of you until you move it. That's exactly what this is. So you had a great way of explaining things too, which I thought was brilliant.
Yep, fair enough.
Look,
And I mean
yeah.
that's actually quite a common explanation. And don't tell Ivan Balabano because he gets really pissed off if you use that with him. But
Does he really? Okay.
yeah.
So, I think having a great mentor, it really is, it's a game changer. You get to see what things look like in action, plus the extra support.
Yeah, and just to touch on a couple of things that you talked about there, which are all very relevant, especially in this conversation, and a problem that a lot of people have, I guess, that are new to the industry that kind of holds them back a little bit. It's theory is great, it's good to understand why you're doing what you're doing and how it works and how the dog perceives it. But at the end of the day, unless you're in the mud pulling on leashes and pressing buttons or doing whatever kind of training it is that you're doing, you're not actually progressing from theory, which is one of the reasons why I take a little bit of issue with this whole science-based dog training where everything is like there's a paper on this and a paper on that, and I'm like, well, I do the opposite every day and it works. It doesn't actually really follow suit as onto what you're talking about. But I think it is important to learn from mistakes. I do firmly believe that you learn way more from a mistake than you learn from just getting things right all the time. However,
Mm,
to me, what a mentor really should do is make you learn from your mistakes quicker and therefore make less mistakes and less severe mistakes. I mean, I kind of I had kind of a mentor, which turned out to be an absolute piece of shit human being that didn't actually teach me much at the end of the day. Oh man, I got bailed up by a lot of dogs before I learned how to get out of the way in the way that I now teach people how to get out of the way. Know what I mean? And so I didn't really have that support system. I did later on when I met my fantastic mentor and very good friend Kylie Bright. Kylie, you still owe me a fucking podcast chat. And I know I message her every week about this, but we will get there at some point. I am going to hound her till that happens. But yeah, I
do
think
I want to
again,
hear it?
learning from mistakes is important, but again, having someone guide you so you don't make a mistake so big that you end up in hospital, you end up getting injured, you end up getting hurt, especially if you want to work with aggressive dogs, is incredibly important. And I mean, with most people who get into dog training in the early stages of your training journey, for lack of a more fucking boring phrase, um, everything's very generalized. You kind of know a little bit about everything, but you're not particularly good at anything. And you're learning, you're getting better. And then most people end up specializing, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, you were saying before, I want to know everything about dog training. I do too. But my day to day job is actually quite limiting because I pretty much only work with aggressive dogs. And what I do, I I wouldn't say I've learned anything massive in the last 5 years that have greatly changed the way that I work with dogs. And so you kind of, when you become super specialized, it becomes a bit more of a job, I guess. Whereas in the early stages, you are quite generalized. You work with all kinds of different dogs. You do all kinds of different things. And I'm trying to like change the way that I'm working a little bit at the moment. But I do love working with aggressive dogs. I have to say that was a little bit of a ramble, but yes, from your opinion, the theory versus the practical thing, that is a very big step, really.
Well, I
Going
think they're
from reading a book
completely
to holding
different.
a leash.
Yeah.
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 And
Completely different.
so I guess like, you know, I didn't really have you do that much practical work. I just had you come on jobs and watch me work with dogs and explain and that kind of stuff. How did that change the way that you approach training? What kind of practices did you do outside of the training session that you followed me on? And I mean, is there any advice you would give someone as a semi mentor on a podcast now on how to fast forward their skills?
I think I learned
That was a
from
really
you.
sorry, that was a really dumb question, but I
Detail.
hopefully that
Oh,
makes
was it?
sense.
I like it. No, it makes sense. I think I learned the most coming out and seeing what things look like. But then you did your obedience classes, and I came along to those both as a observer and a participant. Rusty came and did your obedience classes. And that was really, really, really good because having the hat of both, you know, student and dog owner at the same time, I found that quite remarkable. Like that, I think that fast tracked my learning the most. Um, and again, it was seeing what the techniques look like, and that you always taught a couple of different techniques because, like, we're training the dog in front of us, right? So, some dogs are going to respond incredibly well to a leash correction. Other dogs are going to respond incredibly well to stomping your foot on the ground and getting their attention. So you kind of gave me in every sort of aspect 2 or 3 different tools to put in my hip pocket to use. So if that one didn't work with one dog, you can do this. For example, Blue, who would never take food outside of his house because, yes, he was, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. And you taught me to positively reinforce him with touch, which he loves, or even better now, I keep a tug in my back pocket and I pull that out and give him a quick game of tug. And, you know, and life is very, very, very good for Blue. So having those tools, having a couple of different tools under each category to use, I think was the really important thing about your obedience classes that I learned.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. It's interesting because obedience classes are, at the end of the day, very basic. They're kind of for people who know nothing, who don't really have any behavioral issues. They might have a little bit of pulling on the leash issues. They might have the Labrador that gets a bit excited and jumps on guests when they come to the door. But yeah, for them who just need that little bit of guidance, classes can be incredibly valuable, right?
Yeah,
And and yeah, no, it's interesting that was a good learning point of view. But I want to bring one thing up there to any student that might be listening who are struggling to find a mentor. Hearing at obedience clubs is a really good way to not only hear different people explain training in different ways, but also maybe find the person that speaks your language. I
yeah,
think if you're going to really benefit from having a mentor, you need to have a person that, kind of speaks your language, has a little bit of a similar personality, has similar interests. Like, I mean, if all you want to do is work with oodles and you work with someone who only works with electric collars and working lion shepherds, you're probably not going to speak the same language. And
yeah,
and again, it's, one advice that I've tried giving to students in the past is like, hey, try to think of what you want to do down the track. Do you want to work with reactive dogs? Do you want to teach pet dog? Like, do you want to raise puppies? Whatever it is. But again, it isn't usually that easy in the beginning stages
yeah,
because you end up doing everything until you specialize. But yeah, I think just volunteering, like literally going to obedience groups, a lot of them are more than happy to have students to help out, carry water, fill up water bowls, that kind of stuff. And what you get in return is you get to watch people run classes and explain things in different ways. And I actually learned a lot from that myself, just finding different ways of explaining the same thing to different people, essentially.
yeah. And then you find that person in obedience class that does speak your language, figure out where they live and bail them up in their driveway.
Sure. I mean, this is official Beastly Talks podcast advice right here, people. Become a criminal and stalk people in real life.
Oh, I know, it's a
Wow.
bit terrible,
Yeah.
isn't it? But I can't say I regret the decision at all. I mean, 6 years later, if still I come up against something that I'm unsure on, you're the first person that I pick up the phone to and say, "Stian, have I done the wrong thing here? Have I done the right thing? How would you go about doing this?" So, there is something really special about having that support in all aspects as well. So, yeah,
Yep. Yep. No, for sure. It's always good to have someone to lean on, right? Whether that is real life, whether it's work, whether it's dog training, just getting a second opinion is
yeah,
worth a lot.
very worthwhile.
Now, all right. We've been talking for an hour. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but I need to talk about your idea of being the forever student. This is
Yeah.
something that you brought to me, I think a couple of years ago, but then you kind of brought it up again before we started having this conversation. And I think it's very easy to get stuck in any job that you do. Like I'm kind of, I wouldn't say I'm stuck, but I'm very much doing one thing at the moment. And I am kind of looking to start doing some different things. But, even dog training at the end of the day ends up becoming a job. So, how do you approach being a forever student? What do you look for? Do you have hobbies in dog training? Like, how do you keep it fresh, I guess, and how do you keep learning new things?
Look, I suppose what I meant by that line being a forever student, I expected when I got into dog training that I would, like every other job, you start at the bottom, you work your way up, and then you know everything. And for me, it's that realization that when it comes to dog training, I will never know everything. I'll never know everything. And I'm still excited by every single thing I learn. But I feel like the dog training industry is not the space for egos because you will never, ever, ever be the absolute expert on everything. You may be the expert on one particular thing, but that was kind of um, I suppose when I look at it, I think there are new configurations of the basics all the time. Like knowing the four quadrants of operant conditioning well is vital. Understanding classical slash Pavlovian conditioning well, and recognizing that it has a bigger role than you think it does. That lesson gets taught to me all the time that I'll see an issue and I'll think, oh, that dog needs this. And then I'll go, oh, no, it doesn't. You've gone to give it the tablet and then you run away. The dog thinks that it's playing chasey when you give it the tablet. This is Pavlovian conditioning. What am I doing? Um, Another one that I wrote down on this subject because I not long ago went and saw a Michael Ellis seminar which was remarkable for a couple of different reasons. The first reason was as he went through everything, I sat there with my notepad and pen thinking, my God, my mentor's taught me 85% of this. That's a really, really, really good mentor. But also with my notepad and pen, realizing that it's a real rarity in our industry that we have somebody with 40 years' experience of handling dogs. So they know nuances that those 40 years worth of nuances that Michael Ellis has collected were just so incredibly valuable that I vowed never, ever, ever to miss another one of his seminars. Um, but yeah, just that recognition of, unlike, say, my job in Pitney Bowes, where I could know exactly how this machine works and exactly how to hook it up, that doesn't happen in this industry. You don't know every aspect of it. There is always going to be something new to learn, which I love about it as well, because you can go from, okay, I'm training pet dogs to, for somebody like me, I'm 55 years old. You know, my body isn't as good at bending as it used to be. And I
Paula,
may
don't make
need
this
to do
weirdly sexual.
no,
Don't do that.
no, no, not that way. So, you're conditioning a puppy and you get down on your knees. That's great. I can do it, but I have to hold something to get back up again. And I remember listening to one of the episodes of the Canine Paradigm with Cameron Ford, and that he was a big sports dog person, and he's my age now, and he's gone into scent detection because it's a bit gentler on his body. His body wasn't handling it. So I like that this industry has many different facets that if like me, spring chicken anymore and your body doesn't cope with it quite as well, there are other avenues that you can go down to still be working with dogs. But yeah, I think being a forever student, some people view it as a negative. I view it as an immense positive. I think it's, for me, the staying fresh in the dog training industry, always learning is the way I stay fresh in the dog training industry.
Excellent. Well said. And I think there were a couple. Well, there was one particular thing there that I really want to touch on just before we wrap it up and finish up here, and that is nuances. There's
Mm,
one thing that this industry is so fucking badly lacking, and that is nuances. And that it comes from a lot of things. It comes from ego. There are so many know it alls in this industry, people who just, it's my way or the highway. Um, it's people who are driven by ideology, like this is the only way to train
to
every
train.
dog, right? And then you have the people who go like, I'm the only person you should listen to when it comes to this particular breed of dog, right? And ego gets in the way of so much progress. It destroys so much learning. And I just, the first thing I say to my students is like, hey, I will teach you everything I know about dog training. That does not mean you know everything about dog training. Go and learn from other people, go to seminar, go to workshops, find other trainers, find other mentors. I don't care. I'm going to give you all the information that I have and what's working for me, what's not been working for me. And I'm going to break it down to you as much as I can. But then it's up to you to go and make it better, whatever it is
Yeah.
in whatever field that you're working in. And yeah, fragile egos is one of the things that destroys this industry more than anything else, I would say, because that takes away nuance. That makes a lot of people actually look at dogs as, Pitney Bowes input output machines, right? There
Yeah,
are literally
exactly.
people that are just going, dogs are just robots with inputs and outputs. And you're like, no, it's not that at all. But then you also have the people who go like, you can never train after a system because every dog's an individual. And you're like, well, you need to have a system, but that has to be adapted for the individual, right? And
Yeah.
I've talked about this so many times on this podcast, but like, stay the fuck away from people who speak in absolutes because they do not understand nuances. And nuances is probably the most important thing there is, in my opinion, in dog training, no matter what part of dog training you're in.
Huh. That's very cool.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Any final advice for someone just starting their magical dog training journey?
Yes. A tiny bit of final advice. I suppose with my own story, I would like to see more people using their other experiences and skills in training. So for me, this wasn't the path that I thought that I would be going on, but another experience with looking after grandma taught me a new skill, and integrating that skill kind of led me on a path that I really, really, really love. I take great joy in my work. So I think to young trainers, there is a lot of pressure to do one thing or another. And I would say just trust evolution. Be like that Steve Jobs speech where he talked about, gave a university speech where he talked about flunking out of uni and going and sitting in on um, font, on handwriting fonts. And that became a huge part of, say, Microsoft. I can't remember exactly how it went, but always look out for the sparkly thing in the corner of your eye that captures your attention and explore it. Trust evolution well in your dog training journey.
Cool. I agree. Also, Steve Jobs is Apple. I just want to point that out real quick.
Oh, I know, but it was something I think he worked with. Didn't he flunk out of his university course and then go off into his, I don't know. I'll find the speech. I'll send it to you, Stian.
Well,
It was a
I'm
good
pretty sure he
speech.
flunked. I'm pretty sure he flunked out because he wanted to be a hippie, and then he ended up being a fucking monopoly conglomerate later on, which is kind of hilarious to me.
Oh, how very absolutely fabulous, right? You get a couple of
Yeah.
super drunk cocaine sniffing women and they produce square little saffron.
Oh, fuck, it's hilarious. All right. My girlfriend Paula, plug your stuff. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you? How can they get in touch with you? Let's do the thing. Let's do the breakdown, and then we'll call it a day after that.
Lovely. Let's do the thing. So you can find me on Facebook at Crazy Mutz, spelt Crazy, obviously, Mutz. I do pet dog training. We have a couple of loose leash walking classes. We have a couple of reactive group dog walks. And yeah, we have lots of great fun.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. It's always a pleasure and a good laugh having a chat to you. So thanks for coming on, and I'll let you know the next time I'm in town so we can actually meet up and have a glass of wine in person.
Oh, that sounds like a great plan. Let's do it. We'll let you know the next time we're in Dalesford too, and we'll stop in to have another cuddle with young Gunner. I can't get over the last thing on Insta. He's huge.
Oh, he's huge. He's growing like a weed. I feel like we're
Little
feeding him something we shouldn't be, but I can't think of what that might be.
I'm sure you're not.
All right. Thank you,
Always a
everyone, for
pleasure,
listening
Stian.
in.
Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. My pleasure. And to anyone listening, as always, now's the fucking time to go train your dogs. Goodbye. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Beastly Talks. I hope you found it interesting and that you'll join me for the next one as well. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to rate and review it so that more people can hear about it. Or if you think this particular episode would benefit a family member, friend or colleague, be sure to share it with them directly. You can follow me on social media at Viking Dog Trainer on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. Thank you for your support and keep training your dog.